They were called the lords of the world, rulers of an empire so vast and wealthy that poets said the sun itself bowed before their throne. The Mughal emperors of India built some of the greatest monuments on earth, commanded massive armies, and ruled over millions. But behind the grandeur of palaces and the beauty of the Taj Mahal lay a darker story, a story of ambition, betrayal, and brutal wars not fought against invaders, but against their own blood. This is the untold history of the Mughal Empire's hidden wars, the battles that decided the fate of India's greatest dynasty. It all began in 1526, on the dusty plains of Panipat. Babur, a prince exiled from his ancestral lands in Central Asia, stood before an army 20 times larger than his own. Facing the Sultan of Delhi, Ibrahim Lodi, Babur's men had never seen India before, its elephants, its heat, its scale. But Babur had something new: gunpowder, cannons, and the ruthless tactics of a Timurid warlord. When the smoke cleared, Lodi lay dead and the Mughal Empire was born. But victory was only the beginning. The empire Babur founded would one day stretch from Kabul to Bengal, yet it would always be haunted by the same ghost, the struggle for succession. Because in the Mughal world, power was not inherited peacefully, it was taken through war. When Babur died in 1530, his son Humayun took the throne. Humayun was intelligent and kind, but not ruthless. That weakness would almost destroy the empire before it even began. From the east rose Sher Shah Suri, a brilliant Afghan general who crushed the Mughal forces and sent Humayun fleeing across the desert, wandering as a refugee in Persia. For 15 long years, the Mughal name disappeared from India, but Humayun would return, with Persian troops, Persian cannons, and Persian support. In 1555, he retook Delhi. The empire was reborn, though Humayun's triumph was short-lived. A year later, he slipped down the steps of his library, hit his head, and died. His son Akbar was only 13. It was under Akbar that the Mughal Empire reached its true greatness. But what people forget is that Akbar's early reign was forged in chaos. As a boy emperor, he was nearly overthrown by his own regent, Bayram Khan, and later had to fight dozens of rival chieftains and Afghan warlords. Each victory made him stronger, and each rebellion taught him a lesson: that loyalty could never be taken for granted. Akbar built an empire of tolerance, administration, and art. He conquered Gujarat, Bengal, and most of northern India not just by force, but by forging alliances through marriage and diplomacy. For 49 years he ruled as emperor, the supreme figure of Indian power. But even Akbar could not escape the curse of the dynasty, the struggle for succession. When he grew old, his sons turned on each other. The most famous among them was Prince Salim, later known as Jahangir. Impatient, proud, and ambitious, Salim rebelled against his own father. For years he built his own court, raised armies, and even declared himself emperor while Akbar was still alive. But Akbar forgave him, hoping to keep the empire united. When the great emperor died in 1605, Salim took the throne, but the scars of rebellion remained. Under Jahangir, the empire glittered with art, architecture, and culture. Yet the empire's power began to fray at its edges. Rebellions flared in Deccan and Bengal, and court intrigue turned poisonous. Even Jahangir's own son, Prince Khusrau, rebelled, marching north with an army of supporters. Jahangir crushed the revolt, blinded his son, and executed thousands. The Mughal throne had become both a crown and a curse. When Jahangir died in 1627, another succession war erupted, perhaps one of the most brutal in Indian history. Several princes fought for the right to rule, but it was Shah Jahan, Jahangir's third son, who emerged victorious. The others were killed or imprisoned. Shah Jahan, the man who would later build the Taj Mahal, began his reign in blood. For 30 years, Shah Jahan ruled a vast and prosperous empire. Trade with Europe flourished, and the Mughal court became the envy of the world. But even as he built eternal monuments of love, the seeds of destruction were already being sown by his own sons. There were four: Dara Shikoh, the philosopher; Shuja, the governor of Bengal; Murad, the soldier; and Aurangzeb, the ambitious warrior. When Shah Jahan fell ill in 1657, the empire descended into one of the most vicious civil wars in Indian history. Dara Shikoh, the eldest, was the heir apparent. He was a scholar, A lover of Sufism and sought to bridge Hindu and Muslim thought, many nobles supported him. But Aurangzeb, younger and sharper, saw Dara's tolerance as weakness. While his father lay bedridden, Aurangzeb struck first. He allied with his brothers Shuja and Murad to defeat Dara. In 1658, at the Battle of Samogar, the fate of the Mughal world was decided. The two armies clashed near Agra in a storm of musket fire and cavalry charges. Dara's forces broke. Aurangzeb triumphed. Shah Jahan recovered from his illness, but it was too late. Aurangzeb imprisoned his father in the Agra fort, within sight of the Taj Mahal, and declared himself emperor. The once harmonious Mughal dynasty had become a family at war with itself. Aurangzeb ruled longer than any Mughal before him, nearly 50 years, and under his reign, the empire reached its greatest physical extent, yet it was also under him that its decline truly began. He fought endless wars in the Deccan against the Marathas, the Rajputs, and countless regional powers. He drained the treasury, exhausted his armies, and lost the loyalty of his people. For decades, his soldiers marched across India, not as conquerors but as occupiers. Aurangzeb's religious policies, once portrayed as strict orthodoxy, fractured the empire's unity. The tolerant foundation laid by Akbar was replaced with suspicion and fear. Hindu nobles who had served the Mughals for generations began to rebel. Even the Sikhs, once loyal to the empire, rose up after the execution of Guru Tegh Bahadur. By the time Aurangzeb died in 1707, the empire was vast, but hollow. The emperor himself admitted it. In his final letter to his son, he wrote, "I came alone and I go as a stranger. I know not who I am nor what I have been doing." What followed was chaos. After Aurangzeb's death, his sons immediately turned on each other. Yet another Mughal civil war. Bahadur Shah, Azam Shah, and Kam Baksh each claimed the throne. Battles erupted across the north. Eventually, Bahadur Shah prevailed, but the empire never recovered. The next century became a slow, tragic unraveling. The Mughal court turned into a battlefield of politics and puppetry. Provinces like Bengal, Hyderabad, and Oudh became semi-independent. The once mighty empire that had ruled all of India was now just a shadow of its past, and then came the shock that shattered the illusion of Mughal power. The invasion of Nader Shah of Persia in 1739. With a lightning strike, Nader Shah marched into Delhi, crushed the Mughal army, and looted the city. The peacock throne, the Koh-i-Noor diamond, and the treasures of generations were carried away. Tens of thousands of Delhi's citizens were massacred. The empire never truly recovered. But perhaps the most tragic part of Mughal history isn't its fall at the hands of outsiders. It's how much of that fall was caused from within. Each succession war weakened the state. Each brother who killed another for the throne drained the empire's lifeblood. The Mughals were destroyed not only by invasion or rebellion, but by the same arrogance and ambition that once made them great. Even so, the Mughal legacy lived on. The architecture, art, language, and culture they left behind reshaped India forever. The blending of Persian and Indian traditions gave birth to Urdu poetry, Mughal miniature painting, and the Indo-Islamic architecture that defines India's heritage to this day. The British East India Company, when it began its rise in the 18th century, did not conquer a unified empire. It conquered fragments. Mughal princes fighting each other, Nawabs seeking independence, and generals who had lost faith in their emperor. When the last Mughal, Bahadur Shah II, was exiled by the British in 1858, the dynasty had long ceased to rule. Yet even in defeat, its legacy remained in the memory of millions, a reminder of what once was, and what ambition without unity can destroy. The Mughal Empire began with a warrior's dream, Babur's dream of conquest. It reached its height under Akbar's vision of unity, and it fell under the weight of its own divisions. The empire that once stood as the jewel of the world became a ghost, its glory scattered across palaces, tombs, and ruins. But perhaps that's why the Mughals continue to fascinate us. Because their story is not just one of power, it's one of family, faith, and the fragile line between greatness and destruction. The blood that ran through their veins built an empire that dazzled the world, and the same bloodshed brought it to ruin. In the end, the Mughal Empire didn't fall in a single moment. It crumbled battle by battle, betrayal by betrayal, until all that remained was a memory of what once was. And that, perhaps, is the greatest lesson of all. Empires may be built by the sword, but they survive only through wisdom, unity, and restraint. The Mughals mastered the first, but forgot the last. The empire of the peacock throne, of marble palaces and endless wars, lives on not in power, but in the haunting echoes of history, the story of a dynasty that rose to the heavens and then fell to earth.